Real quick before we roll this footage, Jim Jordan just sat across from Jack Smith in a congressional hearing and spent his entire allotted time trying to convince the American public that the entire January 6th investigation was a politically motivated fraud built on the testimony of a single witness who Jordan claims was lying. He came in aggressive. He came in loud. He came in with printed book quotes and witness names, and he clearly thought he was delivering a knockout blow. But when you slow down and actually look at what was established in that exchange versus what Jordan was claiming about it, the story that emerges is very different from the one he was trying to tell. Watch this.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Smith, is Cassidy Hutchinson a liar? She was their star witness, January 6th committee, their star witness in one of those staged and choreographed hearings they paid the former president of ABC News to put together. She was, in fact, the only witness at this special prime-time hearing, Tuesday, June 28, 2022, 8 o'clock in the evening, and she told some stories. I mean, these were some stories. She talked about President lunged across the back seat, grabbed the steering wheel, tried to drive the car to the Capitol. And I just want to know, you think she was lying?
Chairman Jordan, my assessment of that particular issue is that with respect to the testimony about the president lunging towards the driver, my recollection of her testimony about that is that it was secondhand. She had said she'd heard that from somebody.
You familiar with the name Tony Ornato?
I'm sorry?
You familiar with the name Tony Ornato?
Yes.
White House Deputy Chief of Operations, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, right? You remember what he said about it?
As I sit here right now, I do not.
Yeah, he said it didn't happen. How about Bobby Engel? You familiar with that name?
Yes, I am.
Secret Service agent who was actually in the car that day. You know what he said? He said it didn't happen. And they both said the first time they ever heard this story was when Ms. Hutchinson testified in the primetime hearing as their star witness of the January 6th committee. By the way, did you ever confirm her testimony about this particular incident?
We conducted, as I said before, our own independent investigation of all aspects of the case that we thought was relevant. Attorneys from my office.
Did you ever confirm it? That's a simple question.
Well, we interviewed her, I should say, attorneys in my office before.
Did you ever confirm the president leaping across the seat, grabbing the steering wheel, this whole concoction she brought up in the January 6th hearing? Did you ever confirm that?
Right. We interviewed another firsthand witness who was in the car who did not confirm that had happened, but also
in your deposition to the committee last month, Mr. Smith, you said this: my recollection with Ms. Hutchinson was a number of the things that she gave evidence on were secondhand hearsay. You remember making that statement to us last month in the deposition?
I did, and I was referring particularly to what we're talking about now.
Yeah, and you also said Ms. Hutchinson, regarding this particular claim, was a second or even third-hand witness. We asked you, if you were a defense attorney, how would you handle cross-examining her if she was on the witness stand? And you said, if I were a defense attorney and Ms. Hutchinson were a witness, the first thing I would do was seek to preclude her testimony because it was hearsay. You remember saying all that?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
That's correct, right? Were you going to put her on the witness stand if you ever got to trial?
We had not made final determinations as to who we were going to call as a witness. We had a large...
You were still considering her?
We had a large choice of witnesses in this case.
Are you familiar with what Washington Post reporters Carol Leonnig and Aaron Davis said in their book? They did this book, 300-some pages book on Chronicle and the whole investigation of the Justice Department. And here's what they said on page 310. They said, Jack Smith had wondered whether some of Hutchinson's claims might be relied upon at trial. Still, at one point, Smith told the elections team he wasn't ready to give up on Hutchinson's account. Ultimately, however, Trump administration officials uniformly, fiercely disputed her accounts under oath. Prosecutors on your team told Smith they wouldn't want to use Hutchinson as a witness in court, and Smith agreed. Are Carol Leonnig and Aaron Davis, who wrote this, are they lying?
My recollection is that I certainly had not made any final determinations about
And
who we were going to call.
And that's the point. That is the point. The fact that they used her in a primetime hearing and you won't rule out using her, or didn't rule out using her, putting her on the witness stand when everybody knows she wasn't telling the truth, that says it all. That's the degree the left and Democrats were willing to go to get President Trump, putting on the witness stand someone everybody knows is making it up. Everybody knows that. And you were willing to do it. By the way, you know how many times Cassidy Hutchinson was mentioned in their report, the January 6th report? Any idea, Mr. Smith?
I do not.
185 times. Someone that the whole country knows wasn't telling the truth, and you were still considering putting her on the witness stand because you had to get President Trump. And everybody can see that. We better take a...
Welcome back to Winner's Breakdowns. I'm Winner. And if that clip left you with questions about what actually just happened in that room, then you are in exactly the right place, because I'm going to break down every single layer of that exchange carefully and honestly. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand not just what Jordan was doing, but why it does not hold up the way he wants it to when you examine the full picture. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you thought the moment that clip ended, because I read every single one, and today, especially, I want to know where you stand on this. Look into all of it, because I want to start with something that I think is absolutely essential to understanding what Jim Jordan was doing in that hearing room and why it matters that we push back on it clearly and directly. Jordan's entire line of questioning was built around a single factual claim from a single witness about a single specific incident. Cassidy Hutchinson's secondhand account that Donald Trump lunged across the back seat of his vehicle and tried to grab the steering wheel to direct the car toward the Capitol on January 6, 2021. And Jordan's argument, stated as directly as he could state it, was that because this specific claim was secondhand and was disputed by other witnesses, the entire January 6th investigation and the entire effort to hold Donald Trump accountable for what happened on that day was a politically motivated fraud. That is an extraordinary logical leap, and I want to make sure everybody watching this video understands exactly how extraordinary it is. Even if you accept every single thing Jordan said about Cassidy Hutchinson's steering wheel account, even if you grant him that this specific secondhand claim was not corroborated and should not have been used, that has absolutely nothing to do with the mountain of other evidence that documented Donald Trump's conduct before, during, and after January 6th. The January 6th investigation was not built on Cassidy Hutchinson alone. It was not standing or falling on whether Donald Trump grabbed a steering wheel. The investigation was built on phone records, text messages, emails, contemporaneous notes, testimony from dozens of witnesses, including members of Trump's own inner circle, and documented evidence of a coordinated effort to overturn the results of a free and fair presidential election. Cassidy Hutchinson was one witness among many, and the steering wheel account was one piece of her testimony among many. Jordan's attempt to use questions about that one specific account to delegitimize the entire investigation is not a legal argument. It is a magician's trick. Get everyone focused on the hand that is moving so they don't see what the other hand is doing. Now, let me be honest about the steering wheel claim specifically, because I think intellectual honesty requires engaging with it directly rather than dismissing it. The claim as Hutchinson presented it in the June 2022 hearing was secondhand. She testified that she had heard it from Tony Ornato. Ornato and Secret Service agent Bobby Engel reportedly disputed it. Jack Smith himself acknowledged in his deposition that it was secondhand hearsay, and that if he were a defense attorney, he would seek to exclude it. And according to the book Jordan cited, Smith's own prosecutorial team had reservations about calling Hutchinson as a witness specifically because of the evidentiary challenges her testimony presented. These are real facts, and they deserve to be acknowledged honestly. But here's what Jordan did not tell you, and what I think is critical to understanding the full picture. The steering wheel account was not the reason Cassidy Hutchinson was considered a significant witness. It was not the most important thing she testified to. What made Hutchinson's testimony genuinely significant, what made her the only witness at that particular hearing, was the totality of what she observed and reported from her position as a senior aide in the Trump White House. She testified about the atmosphere in the White House in the days leading up to January 6th. She testified about conversations she witnessed and participated in regarding what might happen that day. She testified about the knowledge within the White House about the potential for violence and the discussions about whether Trump should call it off. She testified about Mark Meadows and his conduct and his demeanor as events unfolded. These are not secondhand accounts. These were her direct first-hand observations from inside the building where the decisions are being made. Jordan spent his entire 5 minutes hammering on the steering wheel story precisely because it is the one piece of Hutchinson's testimony that he can make the strongest case against. It was secondhand. Other witnesses disputed it. Smith had doubts about its utility at trial. Jordan can point to all of that, and it sounds damning if you do not know that the rest of what she testified to was firsthand and consequential and corroborated by other evidence. This is a classic rhetorical strategy. Find the weakest point in a large and complex evidentiary picture, hammer it repeatedly, and use the audience's unfamiliarity with the full picture to create the impression that the weakest point represents the whole thing. And I want to address the 185 mentions of Cassidy Hutchinson in the January 6th committee report, because Jordan presented that number as if it were inherently damning. As if mentioning a witness 185 times in a comprehensive investigation of events she directly witnessed is evidence of something problematic. Cassidy Hutchinson was a senior aide to Mark Meadows, Donald Trump's chief of staff. She was physically present in the White House on January 6th. She had access to and direct knowledge of conversations, decisions, and events at the highest levels of the Trump administration during the period under investigation. The fact that a comprehensive congressional investigation into those events cited her testimony extensively is not evidence of a conspiracy to get Trump. It is evidence that she was a relevant and consequential witness who had direct first-hand knowledge of the events being investigated. You would expect a witness with her level of access and proximity to be cited extensively. That is how investigations work. And I want to make a broader point about what Jordan's approach in this hearing represents, because I think it is important to name it clearly. The strategy of identifying a disputed element in a complex investigation and using it to argue that the entire investigation was politically motivated is not a new strategy. It is a standard playbook for defending powerful people against serious accountability. Find a crack in the wall, hammer it until it looks like the whole wall is cracked, and hope that the audience does not know enough about the rest of the structure to recognize that the building is still standing. Jordan has been running this strategy on January 6th accountability since the very beginning. He was doing it when he was on the January 6th committee. He's been doing it in every hearing where the subject comes up. And he was doing it in that exchange with Jack Smith. But here is what that strategy cannot erase and cannot explain away. Donald Trump knew that the crowd gathering in Washington on January 6th included armed and potentially violent supporters. There is documented evidence of this. Donald Trump knew that Vice President Pence did not have the constitutional authority to refuse to certify the election results. There is documented evidence of this. Donald Trump pressured state officials, his own Justice Department, and his own vice president to take actions that would overturn the legitimate outcome of a democratic election. There is documented evidence of this. And when the violence began at the Capitol, Donald Trump watched it on television and did not act for hours to call it off. There is documented evidence of this. None of that evidence is Cassidy Hutchinson. None of that evidence lives or dies with the steering wheel story. And none of it goes away because Jim Jordan spent 5 minutes in a hearing room questioning the reliability of one piece of one witness's secondhand testimony. The January 6th investigation was not built to get Donald Trump. It was built to understand what happened on one of the most serious days in American democratic history and to hold accountable the people who were responsible for it. The fact that the investigation ran into political and legal obstacles, the fact that the criminal cases were ultimately resolved the way they were, the fact that witnesses were disputed and evidence was contested, none of that changes the underlying historical reality of what happened on January 6th, 2021, and who was responsible for it. And Jordan knows this. which is why he is still relitigating Cassidy Hutchinson's steering wheel story in a congressional hearing years after the event in question, rather than engaging with the full documented record of what led to that day and what happened during it. I also want to spend a moment on Jack Smith's conduct in that exchange because I think it deserves recognition. He was sitting across from Jim Jordan, one of the most aggressive and performative questioners in the entire Congress, being hammered with questions designed to make him look like he was part of a politically motivated conspiracy. And he answered every question carefully, accurately, and without losing his composure. He acknowledged what was true, that the steering wheel claim was secondhand, that his own deposition described it as hearsay, that he had not made final determinations about witness lists. He did not overreach. He did not make claims he could not support. He answered what was asked of him with the measured precision of a career prosecutor who understands that every word he says is going on the record and that accuracy matters more than performance. That stands in sharp contrast to Jordan's approach, which was performative from beginning to end. Jordan was not seeking information. He was not conducting genuine oversight. He was building a clip for his social media channels and his cable news appearances and his base of supporters who needed to hear that the January 6th investigation was a fraud. Every question was designed to produce a soundbite rather than to advance understanding. Every exchange was calibrated for maximum dramatic effect rather than for maximum factual clarity. And the fact that Jack Smith sat there and answered honestly and calmly rather than taking the bait and getting into a shouting match is actually a testament to his professionalism and his commitment to accuracy over theater. Democrats and everyone who cares about honest accountability for what happened on January 6th need to understand the strategy that Jordan and his colleagues are running in these hearings, and they need to push back on it clearly every single time it appears. The strategy is to make the accountability itself look like the crime, to make the investigation look like the conspiracy, to make the witnesses look like the liars and the subjects of the investigation look like the victims. It is a strategy that has been running for years, and it requires a clear and documented counter-narrative that keeps returning the conversation to the actual historical record of what happened on that day and why it matters for American democracy regardless of what any single witness said about a steering wheel. So drop a comment and tell me where you land on this one. Do you think Jordan's focus on the Hutchinson steering wheel account is a legitimate challenge to the integrity of the January 6th investigation, or do you think it is exactly the kind of strategic misdirection I described? Do you think Smith handled himself well under Jordan's questioning, or do you think he should have pushed back harder? Do you think the January 6th accountability effort was handled appropriately overall, or do you think there were genuine prosecutorial missteps that deserve scrutiny? I want to hear all of it, because this is exactly the kind of complicated, honest conversation Winners Breakdowns was built for. If you believe that January 6th was a serious attack on American democracy that deserves honest reckoning rather than political misdirection, if you believe that the documented historical record of what led to that day and what happened during it matters more than any single disputed piece of secondhand testimony, then you know exactly what to do right now. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and share this video with somebody who watched Jordan's clip and walked away thinking he had just blown the whole investigation wide open. This has been Winners Breakdowns. Stay informed, stay honest, stay committed to the full picture rather than the convenient piece of it. And I will catch you in the next one.